Welcome to the Relationship Toolbox, a show about the skills we need to build healthy relationships with others. Our topic today is a very pertinent one for today's society. It deals with how do we use communication skills to relate to those persons who have very passionate views that might be different from us, or even a living style, lifestyle that's different from ours. Does that mean that we just have to avoid them? Or are there ways to use some of the skills to actually make connections with them and to provide better understanding? Marsha?
Well, our guest today is Jeanette Langston. She's the founder and director of Social Tinkering, a human connection project. And I was so excited to finally meet her because I had heard her name bantered around the community, and I was doing civil dialogue work and listening circles, and everybody said, you need to meet Jeanette, you need to meet Jeanette. She's doing the same kind of work. And finally, she attended one, and not only did I was really inspired by the contributions she made to the listening circle, but then afterwards we got to talk, and I thought, oh my goodness, a kindred spirit who's doing similar, not exactly the kind of work that we're trying to do, but I said, well, I think we need to meet and ratify and amplify and let folks know what's going on in the community that you're doing. So thank you for being here today. And why don't you start off by telling us what is social tinkering and the purpose and goals?
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting you that night, and I also had a great time talking with you. And last week when we spoke too, it was great. I'm very excited to be here, so thank you. So a lot of people are wondering what social tinkering is, I think. It's a very different concept, and it's a little bit hard to understand because it's not something we talk about all the time, but we need to talk about more in order to, I think, solve some of the social issues that we have going on and just the relational issues that we have going on. Social tinkering, our mission is to build thriving communities by empowering connections and growing happiness. And that sounds very lofty and big, right? That's a huge mission. And our vision is for everyone to feel like they belong in the world. And also that's a huge vision.
That is, yeah.
So underlying all of this is that we fight, heal, and prevent chronic loneliness or chronic aloneness. Everyone feels alone at some point in their lives, but that feeling of being alone can become a chronic feeling. You can feel alone when you're in a room full of people. In a large family, you can feel alone. And so when you have that happening chronically, it affects your physical and mental health. There's lots of studies out there proving that. And I think it also, affects our families. It affects our communities. It causes us to make decisions that we might not otherwise make. And so what we do is we work to fight, heal, and prevent chronic loneliness. And so we do that by providing opportunities for people to simply get together and meet each other and build a community of support around themselves. And that's a lot of words for friends. So
cultivating friendship. I think the timing is really essential as we're coming out of a pandemic, which on top of our differences forced us to be isolated. And I think that trying to intentionally build belonging, because we can feel like we belong, but sometimes we can't bring our whole authentic self in order to feel like we belong. And then you are compromising. Do you truly belong?
And it doesn't feel
if you have to hide part of yourself or pretend about a part of yourself. So I think that is maybe one of the contrasts between the work that we do. We are trying to build kind of interpersonal relationships, sometimes around preventing or mitigating or transforming conflict, but yours is more intentional on like a grassroots community where
That's why I guess I like the term social tinkering. That just grabbed me right away because it sort of implies just getting in there and working with what you have.
Yeah, and it really is exactly working with what you have. And it came from my childhood of making different things, art and things of what I had around the house, but it, I wanted to apply it to this too, because that's really kind of what I do in my everyday life and how I interact with people is, how can I figure this out? What can I do to do this? And you have to look at things from all different angles to really understand, because people are not simple. We're complex beings. There's a lot going on with each and every single one of us, and we sometimes, assume things about each other and simplify each other, and I think it's easier for us to kind of wrap our heads around it and handle the complexity to make it more simple for ourselves, but it's not we can't solve and get through things and make things better by oversimplifying each other. And so we have to see that complexity and take time to work through that.
I think that our assumptions that we make about each other and about how the world works are informed by our personal lived experiences.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't look beyond that silo of this is what I experienced, which informed my values and beliefs. And so that's a lofty ambition. What are the nuts and bolts? What is your vision? What are the agreements? What are the events? How are you accomplishing this?
And within that too, how do you engage people? How do you find people who need to have that dialogue with you? And what does that dialogue look like?
Well, first, everybody needs to have that dialogue. So no matter what your political, religious views or whatever, everybody needs to have that dialogue, because we're all kind of stuck in our own little bubbles from our own personal lived experiences. And it's really hard to see other people's experiences, like I said before. So first and foremost, one of the cornerstones of social tinkering is we don't shame people for not knowing. We don't, we don't want to, shame is a terrible thing.
Shaming and labeling can really be an obstacle.
Shaming is a terrible thing to do to each other. And we all have a lot of shame in us. Because based from our culture. And so not making people feel bad for not knowing things and vice versa, because not everyone has the same lived experience I do. So why should I expect them to know exactly what I know? And so just being willing to listen to each other and to accept that you don't know everything. Everybody has different experiences, and that's brought them to the way they see the world. And so, if someone needs to be more understanding of someone else, I think the first step is just to really listen. And that's, a big rule that I have, and I thought it was great that my kids' elementary school gave me the words for that clearly and briefly as seek first to understand, then to be then to be understood. So seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right. I think
and
that's
if you keep
an
that
in
the forefront,
too,
because then you're always trying to
listen first. And that isn't our natural impulse.
No.
Our natural impulse is sometimes just like, I have the truth, I want to share it with you, and I want to persuade you of it.
Yep.
So yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
And that's when we get into the trading perspectives and
not
listening and judging.
And then asking why. Like when we do listen, say, okay, well, why do you feel that? And then listening.
Listening with curiosity.
Yeah, and it's really hard because we have a lot of defensiveness, a lot of triggers, a lot of stuff that's harmed us in the past that we're reacting to, even if it's not the person in front of us that did that harm, you still have this stuff inside you that has not really been resolved before. And even if you're aware of it, it's hard to work through that and not respond to other people in reaction to things.
Right, because that person, I'm sorry, Tom.
But even, I was going to say, even people asking questions when you say curious, which is a concept we like, but you can ask questions out of curiosity that are also judgmental, and are leading.
That are not open-ended, that are leading. Like
to ask the question in order to eventually prove that person wrong.
Yes,
is not a healthy way.
That's not the kind of listening that
the
you were talking about.
The gotcha questions, or I'm just setting it up. I'm volleying it to you so that I could persuade you of my opinion.
Yeah. So a lot of what we do is just creating the space, whether it's a physical location for people to come together, maybe virtual because of COVID, but also just creating the space in the room when we're talking to each other for people to be themselves.
So how would someone in our viewing audience here who's saying, wow, that sounds like quite a nice experience, I would like to experience that.
So what do we do?
Yeah, how do they then get a hold of you or in some way take advantage of this?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is take all this social science research on belonging and apply it on the ground, grassroots, in a really tangible experience that people can really feel.
And engage with.
Yeah, because it's hard, even just talking about it, it's hard to understand it, even just talking about it, until you really feel it. And so I have people that will feel it, and then after we have a social or something, and then they're like, oh, this felt so good. I'm like, that's what we're doing. Please come back.
But it feels good because you have some structure, you have some agreements to it. And I was noticing on the website, you have some community agreements. Let me just read them, and then maybe you could amplify what they mean. You're upholding the platinum rule, which might not be what most people are used to hearing. They're used to hearing the golden rule, but the platinum rule, in that you treat others the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, the way they want to be treated.
Which is takes a little bit of
because that's different than how I want to be treated.
Right.
Maybe it's the same, but maybe it's different.
Yeah, that's
so
you have
it's
to
putting the other person first.
Get in their shoes and inquire or check in. Be present and listen with curiosity. I think we talked about this. And you say it's a brave space where vulnerability is celebrated.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, that's
How
hard.
do you make it safe for people to be vulnerable?
Well, personally, I make it safe for other people to be vulnerable by being willing to be vulnerable myself.
Okay.
But you also have to have a level of trust between you two. But somebody has to start. So as the leader of this, I try to start that and say, we're going to say the F word sometimes, and that's okay because we're real people. And we're going to say, oh, you had a great day. Oh, everything's great in life. No, everything's not great in life. Sometimes things really stink, and we can like hold that together with the good things. Like we can have those two things existing in the same space. So just creating that, being able to speaking openly about that to begin this is.
Many
and then
things
setting
can
the
be
example
true
myself.
at the same time.
Yeah, and our board members who participate in leading things too, like they all practice that as well. And that when you can, being vulnerable, you don't want to go overkill. You don't want to go overboard with it because then it doesn't mean anything. But just like slowly letting yourself be seen allows other people to realize that they can be themselves in this space too, and then they'll slowly test the waters there too, and see how much they will be accepted. And then it's trust. So we work to create opportunities where people can build meaningful connections, like what we're doing right now, and that builds trust over time. But trust is really hard. Trust can be broken very easily, like we were talking about earlier. Historically, for marginalized populations, trust is a major, it's not something that's there at all, rightly so. And so trust is tricky, and so there's ups and downs to trust. And so when things are good, that's when you work on your trust building. And then hopefully when things aren't so good, you'll have enough there that you can remember the good things and that you do have some trust, and you can remember the tools, the not shaming, the listening, all that kind of stuff to help bring it back up to the good. Because relationships are really hard, right? They're not just good all the time. And no matter how, like, my husband and I have a great relationship, and we've been married 22 years, but we still have had ups and downs. And so you have to work through those. And that's the same with building trust in any relationship that you have, whether it's partners with organizations, or relationships and families, or romantic relationships, or business relationships. It's all relationship building. So it's all, building trust. And that takes a lot longer than people want it to take. So that it's easy to get frustrated and give up. But if the relationship is valuable to you, if it means something to you, and then it's worth taking that time and then practicing being vulnerable when things are hard and when they're good.
So how
to build that?
I could see viewers perhaps asking the question, so how is this different, say, from therapy? If they were to go to a therapist?
Yeah.
Because can you kind of share your
Yeah, so I
point of
need
view
to
on
tell
that?
what we actually do.
Yeah.
So, because we could talk about the philosophy of it all day. So what we actually do is we do a few different things to create these spaces. So the first thing is we have a monthly social. It's called Gather Together, and it's every fourth Thursday of the month from 6 to 8. It's all ages welcome, kids included, and everyone can come, everyone and anyone can come to these socials for 2 hours just to simply meet other people. And it's not business networking. You don't have to volunteer and do any job. Just come and hang out and talk to people, which is like, if you think about it, we don't do that anymore unless we have a friend group that we do that with. And even in a friend group, you have to have somebody that initiates that constantly. You have to have an extrovert.
And a friend group might be homogeneous or more homogeneous, whereas this is
anybody
deliberately
can come.
open.
And it's super
through
fun. We've had
instead of in person.
And we've had people come that got there and were like, oh no, how is this going to be with all these kids here? This might not be fun at all for us. But then they sat down and they had way more fun than they thought that they ever would. And they loved it. And they called me afterward and told me all about it. And it was like, yes, that's it. Yeah, because those kids can show us more than adults
a lot of wisdom.
Sometimes. Things. And so we've had some really great interactions, and really people have made friends and shared contact information, and that's what it's about, is like, just come and meet other people. Don't sit in your house alone. Come and meet some folks, and come again, because keep coming back, because you're going to meet more people, or you'll get to see the same people again, and that helps build that relationship more. Because it's hard, especially before COVID, I think social anxiety was really high, and people confuse social anxiety a lot with introversion. They're two different things. I think social anxiety has increased over the years, and then COVID made it so much worse. So now it's really hard to convince yourself to come out. But come out and meet other people, because that's the only way you're going to get past that feeling of being alone.
Is the draw, do you have a meal together? Are there activities that are set up? What is the...
Well, we have some things that make it easier for people to interact, because not everybody's like me and can talk to any stranger that comes along. So we have, a kind of a seating area where people can just casually sit down and start talking to each other, for those people that are like me, that can talk to anybody. But we have games, like we have Jenga, we have categories, we have Would You Rather game, where we say, we have a whole shoebox full of questions. Would you rather be an alien or a mermaid? I don't know.
Prompts. So that they can get
and it gets
started.
people talking and laughing, and then that it ends up expanding naturally into conversation with people, and then they find a person they're interested in talking with more, and so and then we also have a table. The kids brought this idea, because the first one we did, they wanted to just sit down and draw. They took all the markers that I had for making name tags, and they just started drawing all over any paper they could find. I was like, oh my gosh.
Art.
So we cover, every time now we cover a table with paper, and we put markers and colored pencils and everything out, and people just sit down and, like, not just kids, but
doodle, and
people just sit down and doodle and talk to each other, because sometimes it's too hard to just look directly at each other and talk, especially after COVID.
Right.
So, and even before, like, honestly, we're talking about social isolation a lot right now all around the world because of COVID, but this has been a problem. Chronic loneliness has been a problem for a long time.
It's exacerbated by media too. I'm afraid that people
technology.
are more comfortable sitting behind a computer screen or emailing or FaceTiming people than having to engage in a conversation where the person is right there.
Yeah, I mean, technology is great though too, because if it wasn't for technology, I wouldn't still be in touch with friends who live in the Czech Republic, and I wouldn't be able to check in with them. And that's meaningful in and of itself. And yes, it's wonderful. We need in-person, like, we need that for our health.
Right. Sure do.
We definitely, and there's some great podcasts out there that talk about that.
How long would this last, this time that people would be engaging with each other? Is
So
there
the
a set
socials
time?
are a couple hours, 2 hours. Right now we're holding them at the Chaffee Art Center.
Oh, okay.
And they're on our website and on our Facebook page. And then I have an email list too that people can join from the website. And then I try to email information out on when we have our socials. We have another social as well that's an LGBTQ plus social for all folks who identify as LGBTQ plus or people who are allies. And that can be allies from businesses, organizations, consent representatives, just any individual in the community. But it's for people to come together specifically around the LGBTQ plus community to help folks meet each other and find support, because that is a community that often it's very hard to find your people that way. We intend to create more of those kind of groups when we're able to with capacity of our organization. I want to start a women's group and a men's group, and a lot of guys are like, oh, well, I wouldn't come to that. But yeah, we'll find the right men to lead that. I have some ideas. So, and yeah, it's just going to be like really just ways for, I don't like to separate people into groups, but you kind of need to create that more intimate atmosphere and the relatable space to, and that's why we have the Gather Together for Everyone, and in the we've started the LGBT one in March, or excuse me, in May, and we'll continue that one on and then add these other as we can, as well as I have a ton other ideas as well.
So when people come to Gather Together, are they needing to agree to the agreements, and how do you deliver that?
That is the expectation, and we have them in a frame sitting on the table where you write your name tag, if you want a name tag, and we have some stickers for people and things, and so the expectation is these are community agreements. If you're going to be in this space, we expect everyone to try to follow those as much as possible, and there's forgiveness if we have people make mistakes. Humans are humans. We make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
So there's lenience for mistakes, but there's also like, are you doing this intentionally and being a jerk? Well, then we'll have a conversation. I will talk. We've never had that happen so far, but knock on wood. I mean, at some point it's going to happen probably.
We find even in communication skills, in coaching, that people will understand intellectually what you're talking about, but when it comes to dealing with their own feelings and actually carrying out that skill, it's another matter.
It's hard, and I do the same thing. Like it's very hard because we have our own stuff that we're dealing with. So we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but
But I imagine when you have these as expectations for the whole group, that again is a support because everybody is trying to do the same thing. In that regard.
Yeah, then everybody's like trying to be mindful of those as we do this. And so if there is something that'll happen, we'll take that person and go have a conversation on the side and then see if we can resolve it. And we're not going to just kick people out or something.
Right.
Habits are hard to change too.
Yeah. So there has to be some like
practice.
We're learning, and you don't just like do this and then you learn it.
Right. But you do want to protect people from harm as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's extremely important to us at Social Tinkering, is that we don't want to cause more harm to each other. There's already enough things causing harm.
So another one of your agreements is that people are speaking, again, from their lived experience, from an I place. And that's something that we have talked about as well. So why is that so important?
It kind of comes back to that assumptions, not assuming things of other people and assuming your experience is the same. And like if you can really start from a point of, this is my experience, and that's the one that I can talk about because that's what I know. I don't know yours, so I'm not going to talk for you. That's disrespectful to talk for other people, and it's like act like you know what their thing is.
The terminology of owning your feelings, owning your thoughts. Which is it's helpful because then people, if they say, well, this is my perspective, this is my point of view, it introduces the concept and there are other points of view. And in a group like yours, I would think that would be an invitation for people to start engaging in different views. Well, this is the way I think about it.
And just hearing that speak from the I is like, makes you think, okay, what does that mean? And it kind of makes you all of these just make you more aware of how we're interacting with each other.
It's delightful to watch young children. I've worked with children right down to kindergarten in teaching the I message, sometimes putting actually silhouettes of their shoes on the floor so that they can step in each other's silhouette of the shoe to get the idea. And it is amazing
I
how
love that idea.
they pick up on it. And they begin to say, well, this is how I feel. And then they turn around, well, do you feel this way?
Yeah.
And so from a very young age, they begin to engage in the concept of perspective and point of view.
I think it's harder
Cool,
to
cool.
refute as well when somebody, how do you refute somebody's personal story?
Yeah.
That is true for them,
Yeah.
and it builds empathy.
Yeah. And once you know that, and that's what Tom and I were talking about too, is like, or we all talked about that last time we talked, is when you, I just lost the train of thought, but it was the point of needing to have a certain experience sometimes before you're able to see that other perspective.
Dealing with differences.
Or,
Yeah.
or
By
tragedies,
true
or
experience.
exactly. I
Yeah.
think you were talking about like a handicap, somebody who was disabled, and that you cannot really truly experience it until somebody in your life has, and until you are an ally or it happens to you. But we're all trying to give people insights by sharing our own stories about what someone else's truth is.
And how different that is, as you say, sharing your story versus trying to convince
Persuade,
someone.
Yeah. So we have these socials. We want to do a lot more of them. It's just a matter of hiring more people. And then also we're working on getting our own physical location and creating a community living room space where people can just come in and hang out. You don't have, like restaurants, you have to have money to
Have a
pay
location.
to eat
and
there. You can't
purchase
just go and
something.
hang out in a restaurant. You have, and you don't go into a restaurant and be like, go to every table and be like, hey, I'm Jeanette, how are you? People like, this person's crazy, please remove them. So our space will be a space where the idea is that is a place where you can come and you can come and hang out and be yourself, but you can also, the expectation is somebody might come and sit down next to you and want to talk to you and meet you, because that's a place where we can meet people. And then we'll hold our events there too, and do all sorts of different fun things that help people come together and engage. So we do the events. We're working on the physical location, which I'm very excited about. I think hopefully that we can do that in the next few months. And then the other thing that we do is we have these 2 collaboratives that we've created to kind of fill gaps in the community. So we created what's called now Rutland Plus. That title was created by the people that come to the collaborative. Rutland Plus is an LGBTQ plus collaborative. It is a way for folks who identify and for allies, whether business or individuals or organizations, to come together once a month and have some shared goals towards uplifting and elevating and supporting LGBTQ plus folks. And so we do that work year round because, as a lot of folks say, Pride is 1 month, and Pride is a wonderful celebration. It's a holiday. It's kind of like a holiday. I mean, it's not necessarily a holiday. It's a acknowledgement of the Stonewall riots and the fight that people had to put their lives on the line for in order to not have it be a crime to love someone. The way they want to love people. And so Pride is an acknowledgement of that, and an honoring of those folks that came before all of us to make today be what it is for us, and the people that are still fighting and stuff. So that's Pride, and also celebration of being together and being able to be who we are.
And quickly, what is your other one? Because we're running out of time.
Yeah, the other one is the Jedi Movement, which is a collaborative of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. That one's just getting started. It centers people with lived experiences, and we will have multiple platforms for everyone to get involved in the community to learn, engage, and grow.
We're excited about this grassroots movement. We're all here in the community together, and that alone should be motivation. I believe that we had the website up, but it's socialtinkering.org if you want to know more information. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse, and we encourage folks to check out the website if you want to support it. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you again soon again on the Relationship Toolbox.